That is awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. This is such an easy way to serve here. Like you said, you don't have to make coffee, but maybe you make coffee all the time at your house. And like, all right, it's not that much harder. The machines are maybe a little bigger. The process is maybe one step two more than what you're used to, but anybody can do it. And as she mentioned, it's not just about the coffee. It's about the serving as you do it, to be able to have the relationships as you're passing out the cups and to be able to serve someone. Just an immense gift that we're given that we don't take advantage of nearly often enough. So anybody can do this. So what I want to encourage you to do is during our break, which we're going to take in just a minute, that if you're interested or you feel like, hey, God may be saying, man, you just need to serve somewhere and this is an easy start, then I want to encourage you to find Shannon before you leave here today. During the break even, I'm going to have her you'll see her. She's got the Amazing Faith church shirt on, which you can get one in the back if you want. There's an amazing shirt for her that she's got on. You can track her down and say, hey, I'm interested. I don't know when I can do it. You might not have all the details hashed out, but I'm at least interested in doing it. Go see her and say, tell me what I need to do. And she'll get you plugged in and hooked up with that, all right? Awesome. All right. So also, as we're taking our break here in just a sec, make sure you sign up in the foyer for two things. One for the groups and two for chili next week or complimentary things around it like cheese and crackers and beautiful desserts, not deserts, right, Phil? You did a great job with that. All those things. And we want to make sure you get engaged in all the stuff we have going on here at Faith. So we're going to take a break. While you do that, sign up, talk to Shannon, do all the things you're supposed to do, and then when you come back, we're going to talk about this question that you can ask each other while you're breaking, is how many miles do you live now from where you were born? How many miles do you live now from where you were born, all right? That's the question. So I want you to get up. I need you to talk about it amongst yourselves, and let's take a break. Let's listen to Stairway to Heaven. We got plenty of time to tackle this question, all right? As the conversations keep going, we're going to talk a little more. If we get the camera centered in online, we're trying to figure out how to frame me in this sitting position. So let's go ahead and talk about how many miles you live away from where you were born today.
Oh, we got one all the way in the back there. Okay, get one right here.
First. 9 miles.
9 miles.
That doesn't even count.
Yeah, it counts. We're going to see who's closest and furthest away. It'd be great.
13 miles, but I used to live only 5 miles away.
13 miles now. Used to be 5. All right. Thank you, Naomi.
30.
30 miles. All right, Tom.
207.
207. All right. Nice. That's the furthest so far. It's going to get further here in a minute. Not quite yet, though. Not this one.
No, I'm 7.9 miles. I had to look it up. And then I actually worked in the same building, in the same wing as where I was born.
Wow. That's pretty crazy. Go ahead, Tina.
Bruce is 8,000 miles away from his home.
8,000 miles.
8,000 miles. Somebody over here, Bonnie.
I don't think anybody's beating 8,000, by the way.
Less than a mile.
Less than a mile.
Less than a mile. Whoop. Gotta go over here. Gotta go over here.
How many miles do we got over here? Where are you rocking to, Rich?
You, okay.
Courtney.
1,262 miles.
1,262. Nice.
Where was that? Where?
Tavares, Florida.
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 Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Behind you,
Wow.
Dave.
Dave.
I'm pretty sure Dimitri's going to win this one.
Yeah. Although 8,000 is going to be pretty hard
Oh,
to
yeah,
beat.
it's pretty good. So I'm 29.53, and then Ilsa is 25.53.
Really? 400 miles difference between Cali and Arizona, right? That's what it was, yeah.
We're going across the pond.
For myself, it's 3,166. For Catherine, it's 3,266 miles.
Is that right? Man, how far? Do you know how far it is from here to the coast, California coast, Dave? 3,000, 3,100? 3 and change? It's almost the same distance from here to California as here to the UK in Manchester. That's pretty crazy.
So then, Oregon,
Yeah.
I am 3,067.
There you
miles
go. Wow, how crazy
from where
is
I was
that?
born. But I think Mason has the shortest. He is 2 bedrooms from where he was born. So
I don't think anybody's beating that. Anybody else? Those are great answers. Anybody in the cafe? We got one, Dimitri. Yeah, let's get Dimitri, who's going to be flying back here soon today, prayerfully. All things goes well. Let's see how long that's going to take or how many miles that is.
Yeah, I think I got beat everybody. It's about 5,000 miles.
5,000. Everybody but Bruce with 8,000. But yes, 5,000 miles. Yes, good grief.
I can walk. How'd that song go?
I'm not singing it.
Can 5,000 miles, right? Wasn't that something? Or 500? Was it 500? Oh,
It's 500.
okay. Just move the
Close enough.
decimal point.
Yeah, just keep pushing it.
Kathy and I are about 180.
Okay, nice. Sweet. Anybody else? Oh, here you go. Moran, what you got? Jersey girl.
Door to door, it's about 187 miles.
187. That's not too bad. Although it feels like a whole different place down there.
So where are we going with this, Pastor?
Oh, I'll get there. Are we good? Everybody got their miles in? That's great. Bruce
I mean,
wins.
I'm sure there's a lot of inquiring minds that
I'm
want
sure
to
we're
know.
gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Bruce wins though. 8,000 miles. Is that from the Philippines? Vietnam. Nice. There you go. Yeah, you're not gonna beat going from Southwest Asia or Southeast Asia to here. That's not gonna be possible. That's almost literally the exact opposite side of the world, right? That's pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Awesome. Yeah, so Bruce wins with the longest, and obviously little Mason wins with the closest. You can't beat that either. Two bedrooms over. That's only a few feet. That's great. I had to look it up for myself. I'm roughly 1,100 miles away from where I was born. And I do ask that question, Rich, at your prompting this morning, because today we're starting a new series called Coming Home. And we're going to take a look at the life of a man named Jacob, about how he left home, how he went 500 miles away roughly, and he learned some pretty hard life lessons over the next 20 years of that journey. And then he came back home from that. So coming back home, though, is never an easy thing to do. I was talking about this with Christian, a matter of fact, a couple of weeks back. It's never quite the same when you're coming back, and it's really hard to manage. And so we're going to look at 4 key moments in Jacob's return journey over the next 4 weeks of these series to see the lessons that he learned. We're going to apply them to our lives today. All right, that's the goal. So it's going to be Genesis chapters 28, kind of roughly where we're going to start. I'm not going to read all of this because it's a lot to read, but we're going to do 28 and then pieces of 31 as well. All right, just so you know where we're at in the Bible. But I'm going to tell it like we're telling a story, because that's how the biblical authors are writing this, and they would have passed it down to their kids. So we're going to tell a story about Jacob this morning. Jacob's life. Jacob's life had a pretty auspicious start. He was the second born of twin boys. His oldest brother beat him out of the mother's womb by just a couple of seconds. He was not very far behind. His mom and midwives would tell the story for years of how he was holding his brother's heel as he was born. Can you imagine that, ladies who've been through pregnancy? If you had a breech birth of twins, that would have been a pretty rough stuff, right, Kelsey? Imagine that. Golly, that would have been incredible. So, so he's coming out holding the heel of his brother, and that's actually how I got his name, Jacob. In the Hebrew, it means he who takes by the heel. Go figure, right? So it also means he who cheats, and you could say it in short, it means deceiver. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not exactly a name I'd want to carry around for the rest of my life. Right? We got some crazy names in this church, but deceiver would not be the first one I'd choose to be called day in and day out. And that's the funny thing about names, right? You can either shy away from them and just live completely opposite of that thing, or you can really lean into them and really be who you are called to be in some ways, if you want to phrase it that way. And Jacob would go on to live up to his name as deceiver. His older brother was the quintessential firstborn in his day. He was the son of a chief. He was the future leader. He was a strong, big guy with hulking muscles and hair all over. He was this great hunter that provided for his tribe. He was a favorite of his dad and the other men in the camp. He was a man's man. But he had some flaws. He was rash. He was quick-tempered. He wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed or the sharpest knife in the drawer or whatever expression you want to use for saying people who are, make dumb decisions. He was not that guy. But Jacob was the smart. He was the dashing. He was the charming. He was the boy who thought 3 steps ahead of his older brother. He was also the youngest, which meant that he would never lead the tribe that he was born into. He'd always be in his big brother's shadow. How many younger siblings do we have here in the room? All right, we got a few. How many older siblings? Yeah, all right, wow, there's a lot of older siblings in this room. All right, yeah. So little Jacob, he's stuck in his society. There's no way he's getting out of this. He's always going to be the younger brother unless he can do something about it. Unless he could maybe outsmart him, maybe trip him up, maybe grab him by the heel like he did when he was born. So he catches his brother Esau when Esau's out hunting one day, and he comes back from a hunt. He hadn't hunted. He's hunted for a long time, doesn't kill a single thing, and Jacob swindles him out of his birthright for a bowl of stew. Like I said, Esau wasn't the smartest man. Life goes on. Esau thinks nothing of it until he gets to his father's death, or at least the closest time to his father's death. And the tribe is getting ready to mourn as the patriarch passes away, but it was the mode of inheritance those days, not to write down a will and to give it over to somebody, but to bless the oldest who would inherit the tribe, inherit the property as they move forward. It was laying on of hands. It was almost prophetic in a way as they spoke over their son. And this blessing was going to be extraordinary because it wasn't just a blessing from a father to a son. It was a blessing of this man giving, who was of the line of Abraham, who's giving God's blessing over his family. That God had promised his father Abraham that from him a whole nation would be born that would bless the whole world, that would show who the one true God really was and how to follow after him. So that birthright that Jacob had cheated Esau out of would have been nothing without the blessing that his father was going to give him. The blessing was the most important thing. So while Esau was out on a hunt, Jacob, with the help of his mother, he dresses up in animal skins because his brother's hairy, right? So he dresses up his animal skins to trick his old blind father into giving him the blessing instead of his older brother. Now, do you think that actually worked? That seems pretty far-fetched, right? I mean, come on. I mean, I know it's a blind old man and he's got he's near death, but really, this is going to pull? But it does. Surprisingly, this works. It actually does. His father blesses Jacob thinking he's Esau, and Esau gets back from the hunt. And he goes in and says, okay, Father, I'm back. Here's the hunt, here's the kill, here's this blessing. I want you to bless me as I'm giving you this last meal. And it's just a wonderful time to share together. And his dad's like, I can't do it. I already blessed somebody. I thought it was you. I thought we did this already. And Esau's furious because this isn't just like, oh, I missed out on a prayer or missed out on a last conversation with my dad. No, he has missed out on the rest of his life that he had planned out, future leader of a tribe, everything. It's all gone. He can't be blessed. Jacob's already taken that blessing. He's been cheated twice now. So he's been cheated twice, and he's going to vow. He says, I'm going to kill Jacob for what he's done. Now, a lot of brothers and sisters, you've said those words, all right? I'm going to kill my brother. I'm going to kill my sister. But Esau, he literally meant it. He was going to kill Jacob. No doubt about it. So his mother sees things are a little out of hand, see things are going off the rails a little bit. Her plan worked, and Jacob's plan worked to get that birthright and that blessing, but it's getting a little too hairy. It doesn't work if he's dead, right? It falls back to Esau then. So she works out with Jacob. She says, hey, you've got to go miles away, hundreds of miles away. Go back to my family in Haran, and you're going to find a wife there. That'll be a good excuse to get you out so you'll not get killed by your brother Esau. And so she sends him away, and he's kicked out of the camp, and he has to hike, walk, ride hundreds of miles away from his family to this other country. And you can imagine Jacob. He spent his whole life tricking people. He spent his whole life getting what he wanted by nefarious means, and now he's paying the price for it. He was the good son, at least in the eyes of his mother, but his deception, his ambition, they're all played to the worst part of himself. Instead of obeying God's will and way over his life, he gives in to what his base desire is. He falls back to what he thought he was, the deceiver. And while it all seemed good at first, the price he pays is hatred, is fear, and is a loss of home. As he walks away that day, I'm sure he was thinking, was it worth it? Was giving into what felt right and what seemed good worth losing my whole family over? Will he ever be welcomed back home again? And what of the God of his grandfather and his father? Surely that God wouldn't honor a liar and a cheat, no matter what the blessing of his father was. So Jacob's wrestling as he walks away, wondering all these questions in his mind, and little did he know he was going to get an answer fairly quickly, actually. After traveling a few days, he sets up a camp. He rolls a rock as a pillow. That's how hard his life was. He didn't have any nice, cushy pillows. He had to get a rock, and he rolls it over for a pillow, and he lays down. He has the craziest dream he has ever had. Probably because he laid his head on a rock to go to sleep. That's probably why he had this dream. But so he lays his head on a rock. He has this crazy dream, and in this dream, he opens his eyes, and he sees what that song we just listened to, right? He sees a stairway to heaven. And in this dream, he hears God. He sees Yahweh at the top, the great I am, the God of his grandfather and his father, and he hears him speak these words over Jacob. I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth Be blessed. Behold, I'm with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I've done what I have promised you. Whoa. The man who has cheated his way his whole life up to this point, the God of his grandfather and his father speaks to him in this dream and says, even still, I'm going to bring my promise through you. I will bless you as your father has done. Now, I'm sure he wakes up in a cold sweat, first wondering, what in the world did I eat the night before, right? That would be my first thing. But then he starts to think, if this is legit, then his life isn't over, right? He thought he lost everything when he was about to be killed by his brother for cheating him out of his birthright. But there's a hope and there's a plan that's bigger than even his failures. But there's still a part of that old Jacob up in there. So he does a couple of things. He takes that stone that he was laying his head on, and he rolls it on top of a pillar to mark God's spot where God spoke to him. And then he says this. He says, okay, God, I'll make you a deal. If you stick with me, if you clothe me, if you feed me, if you bring me back home that I've been kicked out of, then you won't just be the God of my fathers, you'll be my God. If you do those things, then you'll be my God. Man, thank God for his patience. Thank God for the patience of God. Because you would think a dream on that scale of seeing the heavens opened up to you, seeing Yahweh and hearing his audible voice spoken over your life, making a promise, I promise to you I'm going to do this, would have been enough for Jacob to say, that's amazing, great, and just walk off in faith. He's like, no, I got to make a deal. If you do those things, then you'll be my God. Then you'll be my God. God is patient, but he also knew what Jacob was going to have to go through and how he's going to guide him through the next phase of his life. To be able to receive the promise that God gives, Jacob is going to have to go on a journey, not just away from home, but away from his old self. You see, coming home to God requires a few things of you. It requires repentance, which is a changing of your heart and your life, and a remembering of who God is and what he has in store for you that is greater than the life that you choose for yourself. You can't come back home without those things. So Jacob walks away from the stone called Bethel, God's house, hearing God but not trusting him yet. And he continues on this journey for a couple of weeks. And when he shows up to Haran where his mom sent him, he's tired, he is hungry, he is just exhausted. 500-mile walk is a little bit different than hopping on an airplane these days, right? And he's exhausted, and he gets there and he sees these shepherds out in the field rolling this stone off a well. And he's like, oh man, it's great, there's water. So he rushes over to greet them, and he gets this sip of cold, fresh water in the heat of the day. And as he does, I can imagine the scene, and you can imagine with me, as he's dipping his head down, he's getting this water, and it's just washing over him. He's dusty and caked on, everything's nasty, and he's drinking, and his eyes lift up, and he sees what he thinks is like a mirage in the desert. And it's not God, it's not more water, it's a woman, right? Men, you understand this, right? There's nothing else, like pulling your eyes up and you're like, whoa. Right? The whole love at first sight thing that many of us don't really experience, Jacob experienced. He looks out and he sees this shepherd girl, little sheep all around her, and she is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen his entire life. Her name's Rachel, and he makes sure that he doesn't leave that well because he knows she's got to bring her sheep around to get watered. And so she brings the sheep around, and he makes sure he is there to water her flock. And no, that's not a euphemism, everybody. That's a legitimate, like, water the sheep, all right? So, all right. And when she goes home that day, she doesn't just have some sheep in tow, she has Jacob in tow with her, going back to her father Laban. Now, I'm sure Jacob is thinking back to his night at Bethel, right? He's thinking, oh man, this is amazing. Surely God is looking out for him. Laban, it turns out, surprise, is the guy he's looking for that his mom sent him to go find. It's his mother's brother. And Rachel, this is this gorgeous gal. I mean, how could you be having Rachel? And it turns out, guess what, man? Laban needs help looking after his flocks. I can do that. I can shepherd people. This is a great day. Everything I ask God to do, God is laying out for me, right? Little does he know that the deceiver is about to get a taste of his own medicine. 14 years later, as he passes his time in Haran, 14 years he spends eating bread, but it's not his. 14 years he is wearing clothes that is given to him by his father-in-law, not his own. 14 years he lives in a house that is not his, but his father-in-law's house. 14 years he's a glorified indentured servant that is essentially paid for in wives. He gets more than Rachel. He gets a lot more than he bargained for. Laban's a pretty shrewd guy. He gets Leah, the unloved, not very attractive girl. He serves 7 more years, and he gets Rachel, the beloved that he saw in the desert that day. But 14 years he's worked for this other man. He's raised a family, he's had children of his own, but he's not anywhere closer to having all that God had promised him. 14 years, no inheritance, no land, no future. Jacob keeps laboring in these 14 years. And he's going to labor a little bit longer, but all these years have worn Jacob down. But not in a bad way. Not like, oh, he's beaten down and has no hope, but in a good way. God has been shaping him through this labor. He's no longer the same man who deceived his brother and blind father. He's been changed. He's been humbled through this process, and now he's left wondering a few questions. He's saying, God, you said you would be with me, but it's been 14 years. And I don't hear you now when I need you the most. I promised, I said, man, if you would do what you said, I would follow you forever, but I'm not even sure you're listening to me anymore. I haven't heard you speak in years. Are you really there? So 14 years goes by, and he says, well, I'm going to strike one more deal with Laban. 6 more years. I'm going to work 6 more years. Just give me some flocks of my own, and then I'll be able to carry my wealth with me whenever I'm able to finally go back home. Now, I just said it a few minutes ago, Laban's manipulative. Laban is ruthless. Laban's the kind of man that's going to smile to your face and just stab you in the back while he's doing the same smile to your face, right? He's just a brutal, manipulative guy. And he wants to keep Jacob under his thumb because every time Jacob's there, things go great. The flocks grow. He's able to have more kids and grandkids, which means he gets more people to help work the land and the farms and the fields. All these things are great for Laban. So he's thinking, how can I keep Jacob here for at least until I die? Because it works out for me. Free labor and everything's blessed. It's all good. So he's going to do whatever it takes to keep Jacob from leaving. But while Jacob's wondering, God, where are you at? God is at work. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is bigger than Laban is. Jacob's flocks grow no matter what Laban does to manipulate it and keep him there. Every time he tries to see Jacob's flocks growing, he's like, oh, I'll try to take a few and keep them over here. But no matter what he does, Jacob continues to prosper. He goes stronger, more wealthy. He commands more men around him, and soon he's going to be the biggest shepherd in the land and not Laban. Now, where prosperity grows, jealousy isn't far behind, is it? Laban's family sees Jacob's growth, and rumors start to spread. And Jacob starts to see Laban around the dinner table at night and sees the way Laban is looking at him. And he's got some bad ideas, right? Genesis 31, 1 and 2 says, now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob's taken all that was our father's. And from what was our father's, he has gained all of his wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. So Jacob gets worried. He's like, okay, man, Laban's going to try something. He's lived with him long enough, he understands. Laban's going to try to get it all back from him. He's going to cheat him again the way he's done it a couple of times before. And as he's worried, he has another dream that changes everything all over again. And in that dream, God speaks to him just as he did before. It's verse 13. God says, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. God remembers where Jacob was, where Jacob is, where Jacob's going. And God says, now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. It's time to go home. God hadn't forgotten him. Those past 6 years of growth, his flocks growing, his life changing was all because of God. Laban was against everything that Jacob was trying to do. He wanted to suppress him. He was the enemy in Jacob's life, trying to take and steal and destroy, but God was for him. He was never forsaken. He was never forgotten, but he was forged in the fields to be a man of God and not of deception anymore. And now finally, after 20 years, it's time to go home. Looking back, finally, over 20 years, hindsight's always 20/20, but looking back, Jacob could see God's hand on his life, weaving this testimony over him. That providential God who could work good out of evil was working to promise to bless him while others cursed him. Over 20 years, over 20 years, Jacob had been working incredibly hard, but God had been working harder. Jacob was learning in real time that God never fails to keep his word. You see, coming home requires recognizing the promises of God over us and the truth that when we trust him, he is working for our good, no matter what. But Jacob knows this. He gets the word, he gets the dream, everything's going great in his life, but he's got a family now. It's not just him with sleeping on a rock in the middle of the desert. Now he's got a wife. He's got wives, plural. Good for him. And plenty of kids, right? And he's responsible for more than himself. And so he's got to go back to his family, and his promises that God has promised extends over his family. But Jacob's responsibility is to lead them into that promise. And so he gathers his wives around, away from their father and their brothers, and he takes them out in the middle of a field, and he tells them of God's call to go back to his home, to a place they had never heard of, to a place they'd never been, never seen anything, never knew anything about, and he has to make sure that everyone is on board with that plan before moving forward. So he tells them, he said, hey man, your dad's been manipulating me. He's been using you as pawns. He's changed my wages 10 times since I've been here, but I've stuck it out time and time again because I know God is for me, and no matter what Laban is doing against me. But I need you to understand that because I need you to be able to follow me when God calls us back. Anyone who trusts or comes to trust in Jesus and has family that doesn't trust in Jesus knows how hard this conversation can be. Jacob is changed. He's seen God working. He's heard him speak over his life. Everything he asked, God has come through on. But they're taking it in secondhand. He's telling Rachel and Leah, and he's got a couple other wives, actually. He's got a lot of folks going on and a lot of kids. And he's having to tell them and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing and seeing. And say, I know you might not understand it, but this is what I'm going through. This is what God is speaking over my life. And here's the thing. Each one comes to faith on their own. But everyone has someone who is guiding them to Christ. The Holy Spirit is at work first. Ultimately, it's God's work of the Spirit in our lives to trust in him. But God puts others in our lives to point us to Jesus. And so you may have had that in your own experience, but you can be that for someone else. For some of you, you are that guidepost back to Jesus. For your spouse, for your kids, for your friends, for your coworkers. And I want you to understand this. Your responsibility isn't to save your family. Your responsibility isn't to save your kids or your grandkids or your coworkers. Your responsibility is to lead them back to Christ as you walk back to Christ. As you come home, to walk alongside them to see them come home. Now, thankfully, Jacob's wives listen better than some people's wives. Just kidding. All right. I'm not talking about mine, everybody. I'm right, just saying. I'm telling you, you may know in your own life some wives. I don't know who they may be. They're all hypothetical at this point. Nobody in here. Everybody here's wives listen perfectly. And husbands. I know the husbands do for a fact. But his wives listen better. And this is what they said. Chapter 31, 14 through 16. Then Rachel and Leah answered him and said, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he sold us and he has devoured our money, and all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. So now then, whatever God has said to you, let's do it. They fully believe and understand that Jacob is who he says he is and God is who he says he is, and said, we're going to follow you and your God wherever you say to go. That's a lot better than most of our family does to us. Most of us who start talking about Jesus and like, oh, I'll see you tomorrow, all right? Call me next week. I don't need to talk about that. No, I don't need to come to church. All these things come up. But Jacob's wives are like, we trust you, Jacob, and we trust your God. That's what Jacob needed to hear. So while Laban's shearing sheep a 3 days journey away, Jacob packs up all the tents. He packs up all his family. He heads home. And it doesn't take too long, though, because you have all these people and all these flocks around for somebody to notice. So Laban gets wind of it. He takes all his men and his sons and all his people around him, his servants, and he says, we got to go get Jacob. We got to go get my kids back. He's got a good lead, but we can track him down. He's going to be moving slower, right? So he is furious that Jacob has tried to cheat him out of what he thinks is his. And so he's going to chase him down and pursue him and take it all back, bring everybody back under his control. He's thinking, who is this guy who thinks he can pull one over on me? No one outsmarts Laban and gets away with it, right? I'm the one who manipulates others, not me. I don't get cheated. So he's going to lie, he's going to twist, he's going to cheat his way into having everyone back on his property in no time. He's got it all mapped out on his head. But that night, right before he catches up to Jacob and his runaway family, guess what happens to Laban as he lays his head down that night? Go ahead, guess. You can't miss it too much. He doesn't die. Oh, that would be a fun twist. He has a dream. he has a dream. That's a recurring story so far in this narrative, right? You had Jacob dreaming a couple of times, and now Laban has a dream. And in this dream, God comes to him, is verse 24, and he says, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. In other words, you're going to play things cool, Laban. You're not in charge. You think you're going to lie, manipulate, and cheat your way into gaining control back over this family? You're not in charge of them. I am. And so Laban gets up the next day and he starts to head into camp. His daughters see their dad, and any daughter who's ever seen their dad mad does what they do. They kind of like back up. And in their case, they went into tents and be like, okay, we'll see you. We don't need to be a part of this conversation. You got to talk to our husband, right? So they head to their tents as he strides up and confronts Jacob in front of God and everybody. And he says these words in verse 26 through 29. He says, what have you done? That you've tricked me, that you've driven away my daughters like captives to the sword. Why did you flee secretly and trick me and didn't tell me? I might have sent you away with mirth and songs and tambourines and lyres. Why did you permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? You've done foolishly. What are you doing? It's in my power since you've done this. I have the power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night saying, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. So he's furious, but he plays the guilt trip card. Any of you ever had that happen in your life? You got a parent or a brother or a sister or an aunt or uncle, whatever, and they lay the guilt trip card on you. Oh, I'd love to hear from you. I hadn't heard from you in a long time. I'd love to see the grandkids. I haven't seen them in a while. I would love to spend time with you, but you have that played on you from time to time. That's what Laban's laying out here. He's doing the manipulation. He's like, oh, if you just brought him, I could have given you a going away party. It would have been amazing. Why leave? Everything's so good. I treat everybody well. Why would you abandon me like this? Don't you know how good I am for you? You ever heard these things before? Some of you have. The only thing holding him back from dragging the whole family back to Haran is Jacob's God. Now, I love Jacob's response. There's a piece of the story we can't tell. I advise you to go read the whole chapter. But Jacob, after 20 years, is done being the victim. And so he lays back in. Laban lays all this whole thing, and he lays back into Laban. Years of frustration finally come out. And I love what he says here. It's so powerful. Verses 38 through 42. He says, these 20 years, imagine this in your life. And we're talking back to your parent or grandparent, someone who's manipulating you, an in-law, whatever the case is. 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes and your female goats, they've not miscarried. And I've not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by a wild beast, I didn't bring it to you. I bore the loss of that myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or by night. But I returned everything to you. I did everything right. I did not do what I could have done. I did it better than so that you didn't have to take the loss. What an amazing shepherd Jacob was. And he said this in verse 4. He said, there I was, by the day the heat consumed me, as I was standing out in the middle of the desert, in the middle of these fields, just dying out in the heat, by cold by night, as I was sleeping, I was shivering, taking care of your flocks, right? And sleep fled from my eyes. I didn't get any rest. I was doing all these things. 20 years I've been in your house. I served you 14 years for 2 daughters, 6 years for your flock, and you changed my wages 10 times. Most of us would have left a long time before 20 years. But this is why he stuck around. He says, if the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you'd have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw my affliction in the labor of my hands, and he rebuked you last night. You thought you were going to lie, manipulate, and cheat your way to have control back over me? My God is bigger than you are, Laban, and my God is in control, and you're not cheating me out of anything. We're done. He has suffered at the hands of this man 20 years silently, and here in righteous anger, it all boils over. Everything he has, his provision, his family, he finally comes to the realization his whole life, 20 years later, are all due to God's power overriding the intent of his enemies. Jacob's finding out that God is not only the one who enriches his people in oppression, but that those who seek to overcome the one who is in God's will ultimately be overcome by God. Some of you need to understand that for your life. Some of you need to understand that those who seek to overcome you as long as you are in God's will ultimately be overcome by God. Laban melts under Jacob's case. His guilt trip did not play out the way he thought. He can't even go play back to anger. He's just done. And so he decides the only hope he has of not being killed, because by right, Jacob could really lay into him and could really do him serious harm. Whether or not physical death, maybe, but a whole bunch of other things could really cause him to be in trouble. And so Laban says, I only have one play left. I got to make a covenant with Jacob. I got to enter into an agreement, a promise of peace between our families so that I don't have to live in fear that one day Jacob is going to come back and get even for all that I've done to him. He's stuck. And so he results to this and realizes that Jacob holds all the power over Laban now. He's finally in the same position of power that he'd been under all those years. And now imagine Jacob, the deceiver, the one who had manipulated his family, now been manipulated. Now he's got the power back. What does he do? How would you respond? 20 years of oppression, 20 years of deceit, 20 years of being lied to and cheated on, and all these things. And one's trying to play it one more time. How many of us would say, I got you now. I'm going to take you for all that you're worth, old man. You're done. How many of us would say that? A lot. A lot would. The old Jacob may have taken advantage of that. He would have made the old man pay. He would have belittled the guy. He would have demanded more flocks and herds for his trouble. He may have even whipped the old man all the way back to his own house. But instead, he does something else. 45 through 54. Jacob took a stone and he set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. And they took stones and they made a heap. And they ate there by the heap. And Laban called it Jegar-Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap, this pile of stones that I've made, this is a witness between you and me today. Therefore, he named it Gilead. And in Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch. That's what it means. The Lord watches between you and me when we're out of one another's sight. And Laban tries to guilt trip him one more time because Laban has nothing left. So he tries to guilt trip him one more time. He says, if you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, or that no one is with us, see that God is a witness between you and me. He's trying to put one more little barb in Jacob's side, even here in a covenant of peace. Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and this pillar which you set between you and me. This heap is a witness. This pillar is a witness. I won't pass over it to you like he has the power to do anything. But you're not going to pass over to me to do me harm either. The God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of your father, let him judge between us. The one that you say is in control, the one who visited me in a dream, let him decide between us, right? So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country, and he called his kinsmen to eat bread. And they ate bread, and they spent the night in the hill country together. This is huge. You might miss this because you don't understand really what's going on, but I'm just going to break it down for one thing we need to understand here today, is that instead of rolling heads, Jacob rolled stones. He had rolled one under his head to sleep 20 years earlier, and he dreamed of heaven and earth meeting at a stairway. He rolled that same stone on a pillar and made a vow to God, if you come through for me, you will be my God. He had rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well when he met the love of his life, and now instead of rolling Laban, he rolls a stone again, this time to make peace. Why? That's the question you should be asking in this text. Why? How could he? Because after years of being the deceiver, he was changed through what God had brought him through. And so after 20 years, he's come to know who God is and how he's working in his life, and now knows that through this process, he's at least more sure of who God is and who he is through what he's been through. He realizes he is a child of the God of Abraham and Isaac, the God who takes the deceiver and makes them a believer, who meets the outcast with nothing, with just a rock to lay their head on, and promises them everything, and then actually comes through. See, Jacob doesn't need a covenant with Laban to be protected. Laban needed the covenant. Jacob didn't need it. He was the one in power. God has him. But instead of taking advantage of the power over Laban, he instead rolls a stone anyway. not just of peace. He didn't need the peace with Laban. What he needed was a marker to mark that he had stood in the presence of God, had given his whole life in the presence of God, and God had met him even in the midst of his enemy. That stone that Jacob set up, that was a stone that marked a man changed, that released him from servitude, and more importantly, released him from his past. That night, I love that scene. You can miss those two sentences at the very end of that. Jacob offered a sacrifice and called his kinsmen to eat bread. And they ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. What did he ask God for back at Bethel 20 years before? He says, let me eat bread. Provide for me my own bread that you give me, not someone else's. And here he is. After spending 20 years eating someone else's bread, he eats his own because of what God had wrought in his life. That night, he sits around that campfire on the border of the home he's coming back to with his own flocks, his own family, his own tribe, eating his own bread. And he makes a sacrifice of thanksgiving to the God who came through beyond his wildest dreams. You see, coming home to God means making peace with your past, recognizing that who you were isn't who you are. That God loves you enough to see, hear, and know you whenever everyone else has written you off. And he also loves you enough to call you out of what you think you are into who he has made you to be. There's a recurring pattern of the biblical story, and it's one of transformation, a changing of who we want to be to who God is calling us to be, from our desire to his desire. And that part of the journey, that coming home, a big piece of that is rolling stones. Is setting up markers of remembrance of God's work in your life as you look back and you say, I've met God here. And more importantly, he met me. When I was a failure, when I was abandoned, when I did no good thing, when I cheated and lied and stole and did it all the wrong way, yet God said, I have a future for you. I have a blessing for you. I am not leaving you in the desert with a stone under your head. I'm leaving you with a hope, with a promise, with a future. Roll the stone. Remember who you were, but remember what I did to make you who you're supposed to be. This week, I want to encourage you to get a stone of your own. Now, we're in Vermont. You can find them all over the place. So if you want to actually get an actual stone, feel free to do so. But do something else if you don't want to actually go up and pull a rock up in your yard. Get a sticky note out. Get a piece of paper out. Maybe even write a note on your phone about something that God has done or said over your life this summer. I'm not talking about your whole life. I'm just talking about this past summer. And if you're like, I haven't heard God this summer, well, go back to the last time you heard him. And if you hadn't heard from him, I pray you're going to hear from him today in just a few minutes. But what I hope you do, and I encourage you to do, is he is drawing you home. As he's drawing you to him, as he's teaching you to trust him, how has it been speaking or working in your life so far? What are the markers in your life that you can write down and say, he did that? I didn't do it. I would have screwed that up. I've screwed up so many times. He's done it, and him alone. How has he taught you to trust him? Write it down, post it somewhere, remember it, come back to it when you forget, because 20 years can go by sometimes between times you hear from God, and it'll be like, I don't know if I trust him. You got to remember. You got to look back on that marker and say, yep, he came through. He's going to come through again. So this week, I encourage you to do that. For non-believers, if you don't trust Jesus, and we pray this place is, we're full of people who don't trust Jesus yet. For non-believers, this is still for you. This is still for you, because Jacob had grown up with the faith of his fathers, but it wasn't his. That's what he said, right? He said, if you will come through for me, God, then you'll be my God. You were my grandfather's God, you were my dad's God, but you weren't my God. When he saw God come through for him, he said, I know you're for me. I know there is no other God beside you. There is nothing worth worshiping or following other than you. It became his. Before he knew God, though, God knew him, right? So when you're on this journey, and Jacob needed this. He needed this journey to make and understand and know and begin to trust God and to make him his own. And we're all on this journey of faith. We all start out like Jacob, being deceivers. Each and every single one of us. I'm no exception. None of us here are. Each and every single one of us have grown up deceivers. We're all on this journey of faith where we do this, where we lie to ourselves at start by saying, I've got this. We lie to others like we lie to ourselves, and we try to protect ourselves. We try to protect those we love, or to gain something we don't think we could ever have if we were honest. But God shows his love for us in this. While we were yet still sinners, liars even to ourselves, Christ died for us. The largest, most important marker in our journey is the cross and the stone that rolled away from the tomb. Just as Jacob rolled a stone on a pillar, just as he rolled it off the well, just as he rolled it up on the pillar to mark God's trust and provision in his life, God rolled the stone away from Jesus' tomb and raised him to life. Not just for Jesus' sake, but for ours. That those who were deceivers can now be believers. For there Jesus, God in flesh on that cross, took on the price of our deception and he paid it in full, making the way for our old life to die and a new life to begin. Romans 5:10 says, while we're still enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his son. Much more, now that we are reconciled, shall we be saved by his life. God desires to be in a relationship with you so much, he was willing to die for it. And he gives that new life through the resurrection to us by filling us with his presence, by filling us with his spirit to live transformed here and now. So maybe you're here. And maybe you haven't made that decision to put your full faith and trust in God, in Christ, his son, in the one who sees the deceiver and makes him to believer. Today is your day. So let's take just a minute here. Fold your hands. Well, you have to fold your hands. Bow your head, close your eyes. Just do something to be able to focus in on God, whatever it takes for you to be able to listen. It took sleeping for Jacob to be able to hear God, but it doesn't have to now because we are blessed by the Spirit of the living God, who comes and lives amongst his people, who comes and abides with his people. And so as you're listening in, as you're leaning in, what I pray that you do in this moment is to take a minute and not just listen to me, but what is God speaking over your heart? What marker is he saying you need to raise up in your life to show that I've come through for you? What does he say? Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you that you are a God who speaks. You are not silent. You are not absent. You are not removed. You are present with your people. And today, Lord, I pray that just as you spoke over Jacob, you speak over us. Today, Lord, if there's people who don't know you, and by I mean by trust in you. Trust that there is no hope in ourselves. We could do no good thing. We can't work our way to you, Jesus. And thankfully, we don't have to. That we are covered in grace and mercy. That the good things we do are because you love us, not because we need to earn your love. God, I praise you that you meet deceivers and turn them into believers. If there are those here today who want to receive and trust and know and have a hope and a promise as Jacob earned, what you do is you just cry out to God and say, dear Jesus, Lord, I need you. I need you more than myself. I need you more than my wife, my husband, my kids, my mom, my dad, my job. Anything else in this world has no comparison to you. I need you to be my God. I'm a deceiver who needs to be a believer. And today I'm trusting the only way that happens isn't by making a deal with you and watching you come through, but by trusting that you have already come through and that you're speaking over me now, drawing me into new life, a dying of my old self, a raising to new through the life, death, and resurrection of your Son, Christ Jesus. If that's you and you prayed that prayer, then that's step one. That's not step 10, step 20, whatever. That's not the end. That is the beginning of the first step towards an amazing journey with God. We're going to talk about over the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks from here, of how Jacob continually has changed. Next week, we're going to see him wrestle with God, because coming home isn't just about knowing who you're supposed to be. It's coming to grips with what that looks like and how God is calling you into that. And so if you've come to trust him, this is the first step that we want to invite you in on a longer journey. So if you pray that prayer and you come to know and trust God's Son, Jesus, then I want to invite you to find me, find Chris and Catherine. They're up front here in the very front. They're the ones from the UK. You can't miss them. They're amazing. And they want to pray with you. I would like to pray with you. My wife, there's so many people around this space that want to engage with you and walk in that next step of the journey with you as you continue to come home to him.